In the former episodes, we did talk about the Mediterranean philosophies. Before continuing to talk about the Mediterranean philosophies, we have to explain about the historical background of the Mediterranean people, ancient Mediterranean people, Mesopotamia, particularly Babylonia, Sumeria, Akkadian, and Assyria, etc. We should also include Egypt. Egypt is very important. So we can first begin with Egypt, ancient Egypt. Ancient Egyptian civilization emerged on the lower banks of Nile River in Northeast Africa. It is an African country, Northeast African country, ancient Egypt. This civilization had been emerged to flourish with its capital in Memphis city. Memphis city was the ancient capital of Egypt. And this ancient Egyptian civilization began to flourish since 3100 BC, according to the conventional Egyptian chronology. Egyptian chronology describes that it has developed since 3100 BC and prolonged to remain towards 2686 BC. The ancient Egyptian monarchs were very important at the time, and the prominent ancient Egyptian monarch was Menes, who politically unified the upper and lower Egypt on the river bank of Nile. So, one of the prominent ancient Egyptian monarch who was known as Pharaoh was Menes, who politically unified the upper and lower Egypt on the river banks of Nile. This Egyptian monarch, Menes, was very dominant and ruled ancient Egypt by invading, conquering, and annexating both the upper and the lower parts of Egyptian geographical areas. It is believed that the first monarch of ancient Egypt was Menes, and the last monarch was Nectoneb II during 30 BC. And the history of ancient Egypt unfolded as a series of stable kingdoms. As a series of stable kingdoms with intermediate or intermittent relative instability, known as intermediate periods. The ancient kingdoms, Egyptian kingdoms, were usurped or somewhat manipulated by certain intermediate periods. The first intermediate period, the second intermediate period, the third intermediate period, and the last period, and then the Ptolemaic period. These were the classified historical continuity, historical stages during that time. So, the pharaohs were ancient monarchs. They were the rulers of Egypt who ruled since the first dynasty until the annexation of Egypt by the Roman Empire. After the Ptolemaic Empire, the Romans invaded Egypt. And when we talk about the ancient Egyptian kingdoms, we have to first take into account of the old kingdom. Therefore, the various ancient Egyptian kingdoms fell into three categories. They are the old kingdom during the early Bronze Age, middle kingdom during the middle Bronze Age, and the new kingdom after the last period of the Bronze Age and since the outset of the Iron Age. So these ages of historical stages are very important. The old kingdom of Egypt toward from 2686 BC toward 2181 BC. from 2686 BC toward 2181 BC. These periods were the period of ancient rulers. From the beginning, it was Menes who politically unified the upper and lower Egypt on the banks of the Nile River. So the Old Kingdom was very important and very popular at the time because of their religious and cultural contributions. Their sculptures, their traditional arts, everything has developed during this period. The Giza pyramids, the great Sphinx statue of the so-called land statue, were built during this Old Kingdom period. And then the intermediate period began, 2181 BC, from 2181 BC toward 2055 BC. This was the first intermediate period. Egyptian central government collapsed at the time. The Old Kingdom, at the end of the Old Kingdom, the Egyptian central government collapsed. And during this period, the local provincial leaders competed to each other for territorial control and political power. And thereby, the upper Egypt and lower Egypt on the banks of the Nile River witnessed several invasions, waging wars, etc. during this period. And one of the prominent provincial leader, Heracleopolis, controlled lower Egypt in the north area by waging wars and annexations, while Thebes controlled upper areas of the Egypt, in south parts of the Egypt. He was also carrying out several wars for annexations. Later, the Theban forces became very powerful under the control of Nebuchadnezzar Mentuhotep II, who finally defeated Heracleopolitan rulers and united both the lower and upper Egypt. And thereafter began the Middle Kingdom period. Middle Kingdom period began from 2134 to 1690 BC. The important pharaoh rulers at the time were Mentuhotep II and his second dynasty. Thereafter, Amenhotep I of the 12th dynasty. I mean the 11th dynasty. Mentuhotep II and his 11th dynasty and Amenhotep I of this 12th dynasty. Then thereafter, the New Kingdom arose. In between there occurs several intermediate periods, first, second, third, etc. The last period and the Ptolemaic period will finally come over. The New Kingdom began from 1549 to 1016 BC. The New Kingdom established pharaohs' dominance all over Egypt with unprecedented control of territories and by prosperity in agriculture, trade and commerce, and by expanding their frontiers and by strengthening their ties with the neighboring countries with friendly relations. Thutmose I and his grandson Thutmose III were the outstanding rulers during the New Kingdom period. Around 1350 BC, Amenhotep IV ascended the throne and became very powerful. He was a powerful pharaoh, and he changed his name as Akhenaten. And thereafter, several pharaohs came into power, less significant. But at the period of Ramses II, Egypt became very powerful and very important with its cultural, religious, and political importance. He built several temples, statues, icons, everything as such, and he gave importance to the sun god. These were the periods of Egypt in ancient times. Now we can talk about the ancient Egypt advancing to reach the pinnacle of dominant power during the New Kingdom, who ruled a greater part of Nubia and a sizable geographical area of Levant. These are the important geographical area in ancient Egypt. Thereafter, several intermediate periods occurred. The gradual decline of the New Kingdom in Egypt witnessed several foreign invasions, notably by Hyksos, the Assyrians, Persians, and later Macedonian Greeks under the control of Alexander the Great. After the Ptolemy rule, before the Persians' domination, the Alexander the Great controls Egypt. And later on, the Ptolemy kingdom began to establish their power throughout Egypt, ancient Egypt. And after the premature death of the Alexander the Great, the Ptolemy kingdom became very powerful and began to rule Egypt until 30 BC. The Queen Cleopatra was one of the outstanding rulers in ancient Egypt until it fell into the hands of the Roman Empire. Egypt remained for a long time as a Roman province until 640 AD, and then it was conquered by the Islam Rashidun Caliphate. Islam Rashidun Caliphate invaded and conquered Egypt completely. These are the ancient histories of Egypt. And now we can talk about Cleopatra, Caesar, Mark Antony, etc. But there is no time remaining, so we can talk it all about in the next episode. Now let us stop this episode.